Turn in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. What audience did Matthew primarily write to? The Gentile population or the Jewish population?
Jewish.
Correct, Jewish population. He was in fact trying to show very clearly how Jesus was the Messiah. And we're studying the book of Matthew, probably over the next year or so here. We'll take our time, little at a time. It's packed full of wisdom and history about our faith. We can learn so much by going through it chapter by chapter, verse by verse. The way that Matthew chose to start out his treatise on Jesus being the Messiah was to show us what? In the very beginning of his book, how did he want to show us that Jesus was the Messiah? Look back at the beginning of the book.
Genealogy.
Yeah, thank you. Genealogy, right. There you go. I knew it was in there. Just had to pull it out of you. That's right. So we started back really at the very beginning to show you the incredible work of God throughout history to give us the Messiah. Why is that important? Because it was foretold back even in the book of Micah, a prophet of old, that he was going to be born where? Bethlehem. Right. More specifically, yes. Born in Bethlehem, of all places. Hence the name of the church. While we pay homage to the birthplace of Jesus here at Bethlehem Christian Church and have for many years. So we are looking at a very short verse today, but we'll kind of read through this. Of course, this is very commonly known as the Lord's Prayer. And it is a model prayer. It's a prayer that we say a lot of times in churches and repeat and memorize, which is awesome. This then is how you should pray. This is Matthew 6, verse 9. Jesus is teaching. This is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive our debts, that we also have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from the evil one. Packed full of information here. What I want to focus in on today is give us today our daily bread. So, I'm going to talk about food a little bit. It's a very short little verse. First of all, what does it say? All right. Give us today our daily bread. This is, if you don't like leftovers, this is one of your greatest defenses of leftovers. Personally, I love leftovers. It's a big part of our life at the Graves household. We make sure that one meal is big enough to go into the next day for lunch. It's wonderful. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about actual food, or what is Jesus talking about? He goes from talking about heaven, kingdoms, and all of these things, and how to talk to our Father in heaven, and how we should make his name holy. And then he puts in this little thing here that says, give us today our daily bread. That must be very important because he put it in there. It's a short thing. It's a short thing that we're supposed to pray. Give us today our daily bread. What is daily bread? Let me ask that first of all. What is a daily bread, and why is it daily? Well, when I go to the grocery store, the first thing I notice is that bread is not daily. It has a date on it. It's usually a week or two away. And sometimes, of course, it can go past that. Sometimes I'm very scared that I find a loaf of bread in our cabinet and the expiration date was 3 to 4 months ago and it looks fine. Does that scare you? It scares me too, because that's not right and that's not normal, right? How does bread last so long past its expiration date. Now, of course, if it goes too long, and too long, and too long, it will turn into something completely different that I've noticed. And I found one of those one time too, and was equally as scared as what it looked like. So Jesus here is talking about something a little different. He's talking about a daily bread. Give us today our daily bread. He's not talking about the preservatives that we have in our foods today, which, yes, can kill you. And we know that the bread we have today in stores is mainly what? Sugar. It's mainly sugar, April. It's all pretty much sugar, turns the sugar in your system. It may not be one of the healthiest things in the world, but I love it. I love it. And if you've ever been in a situation where you're at home and you're baking fresh bread, doesn't that just smell so good? It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And then we have a thing called unleavened bread. What in the world is that? Unleavened bread and that kind of a thing is kind of what Jesus is paralleling here. Bread that does not have a preservative. Bread that you only need and use once a day. It is a daily bread. If you've noticed, we are not designed to be able to exist for a long period of time without food or water. We have to have it at some point. Some people I know of have to have it on a very frequent basis, or they will get grouchy. I won't mention any names. But maybe that's all of us, right? Everybody's pointing now. All right. It's true though, right? Because I know even on the way here, Colton was already talking to me about what we were going to have for lunch. And I said, you're going to like today's sermon, Colton. We're going to talk about food for a little bit. It's probably going to drive you crazy. But it's true though, isn't it? We can't really go very long without food, water, and bread. This kind of bread. So God has designed us to be dependent upon something outside of ourselves. What is that thing that we need to sustain ourselves on a daily basis that we cannot and should not live without? Is our daily bread. There's two parallels here that come to mind. First of all, that yes, we cannot live outside our own means and live joyful and peaceful. We are designed to be dependent upon God. We are babes in the flesh. We are babes in the faith. Think of a baby as completely dependent on the parents to give that baby what that baby needs, or they will not make it. We, in the same way, should be like children in our faith. We are not designed to exist outside of God's provision. Now, many people, as they go through life, and make sure you listen to this now, many people, when they go through life, unmistakably believe they can live outside of God's provision. And they will do everything they can to try to meet that need on their own. And what they don't know is that they are starving inside. I personally have never seen anybody starve to death physically. I've heard about it, I've read about it, I've seen the horror stories around the world and even in our own state sometimes of how the situation. But I tell you what, I have watched people starve spiritually. To watch them starve spiritually every day is a hard thing to watch. Why is it so hard to watch? Because I know they don't have to. I know that there's a God that's willing to provide that sustenance and that daily bread right there for them every day. But they choose to walk right by it. And it's heartbreaking. Now, many times we're asked to pray for those people all the time. And sometimes those people will eventually come around to finding a feast of spiritual gifts that God can bestow upon them. But it is hard to watch. It's even hard to watch in our own lives, our own selves. We can get outside of God's will so much that we forget who actually provides our daily bread. And it's God. So there is a spiritual connotation to everything we read in the Lord's Prayer. It has parallels with our need and dependence upon God. We do need, first of all, yes, we need daily sustenance to eat to survive. But even greater than that, as we read for the communion, who is the true bread of life? Jesus. Jesus is truly the bread of life. We cannot and will not ever have true peace in our lives without realizing that we need daily bread to survive. Not just in our physical self, but in our spiritual self. So what do we do with this information? First of all, we see that God has created us to be dependent on Him on a daily basis. We should not and cannot go one day without realizing our daily need for God. God says in the Bible, every morning has new blessings. That's true. The blessing is that you woke up. How many times I'm just thankful I've got another day. I don't know what the day holds. Most of the time, the days hold things completely different than what I thought was going to happen. Yeah, right? Yeah. As soon as I put my feet on the floor, things have changed. I mean, you're right. You never know. Some days, at the end of the night, I look back and go, whoo, that was a ride. Right? One of my greatest heroes in the faith, and you may not consider this person a great theologian. One of my greatest people that I've ever looked up to in his faith was NASCAR driver Mark Martin. What? NASCAR driver Mark Martin. Does anybody here know what he said after every race? No? Every race, they would interview, they go NASCAR interviews all the drivers. This is back old school NASCAR. They would interview all the drivers. Every single time. I don't care where Mark Martin came in the lineup in the end. He may come 5th, 6th, or 40th. He would always go, woo, that was awesome, wasn't it? I know I came in 40th, but that's okay. It was a great race. I love racing, getting out there, bumping each other, going out there. It was awesome. I can't wait till next week. Let's go racing. Let's go bumping. Let's go driving. That's what Mark Martin would say after every race. He always said, at least I'm in the race. At least he's like, there are guys out there that would do anything to be a NASCAR driver. It's a very competitive sport to be on that track. He said, I'm just thankful every day, every time I get out here, that I'm in the race. It's a great, great parallel to our daily bread, our daily dependence on God, is that at the end of the day, it may not have turned out the way I thought it should. It may have turned out completely different in a lot of ways that may even sometimes be considered disappointing. But I tell you what, every time I lay down at night, I try to say the Mark Martin prayer, and that is, woo, thank God, at least I'm still in the race. Because I have friends and family members that aren't in the race anymore. For whatever reason, they died at an early age. Or something happened and took them out. And I'm just saying, I know it's hurtful and painful to have loss, but I tell you what, today, I may not have come in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and sometimes during the days, at the end of the day, I don't feel like I can qualify the top 15. But I have to tell myself, whew, at least I'm still in the race. I'm going to get up tomorrow, and we're going to do this again, and I'm just glad I'm here. And so, when we ask for God to give us daily sustenance, that's what He's saying. He's saying, look, it's a daily thing. I have not designed you to store up treasures on earth. I've designed you to store up treasures in heaven. That's a completely different way of thinking. Some people in this world that I've personally known through the years have amassed immense wealth on earth. Their storehouses overflow with wealth. And they are some of the most unhappiest people I've ever seen. They are surrounded with houses and money and cars and fame and fortune. But you know what I see? I see somebody that's starving to death. It's hard to watch. I have seen people like that in my life also, though, come to Christ and realize that all those things that they chased after for so long really don't mean anything in the end. that they actually would give it all up to have peace in their soul, peace in their families, in their marriage, their children. And that is exactly what God is talking about. It's just daily dependence on Him to give us what we need. There's no sin in being successful. I know plenty of successful people that have a great relationship with God. But you cannot let it be your God. And it will not fulfill you. And it will not sustain you. And it will not be your daily bread. Let's pray.